Welcome back to another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first to Spartan Grown.
What's up, guys? What's up, Jack? Thank you again for having us. Another great show. I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word. Or if you don't have an Instagram, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. I'm an organic grower at home and at heart, and I'm also a synthetic grower at work, so I can answer questions on both sides.
Always happy to have you back. I actually sent you the Zoom link on your email because I remembered it from all the introductions. So I didn't have to ask you about it. I was like, oh, I already know his email. And last week he had to log in typing it out manually. So this week I'll send it to him just in case. And you were here nice and early this week. Hopefully you didn't have any trouble. But
I appreciate it.
Good stuff. I'm going to pass it next over to Kyle Breeder.
Yeah, my name is Kyle Breeder. I specialize in feminized breeding. And just real quick, shout out, thanks to anybody that came by and saw me this weekend. It means a lot to me. And if whoever's listening right now that showed up, we all thank you for being listeners. And yeah, I have a website, pbreeding.com, if you want some seeds. I have some feminized seeds and a few autoflower seeds. A new autoflower drop's coming soon. Collaboration between me and Gnome Automatics, aka Full Duplex, and glad to be here.
Happy to have you back, and we'll definitely get more into a little bit of the Harvest Cup stuff a little bit later. But next up, we've got Dr. MJ.
Hey everyone, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I am excited to be back for the show and looking forward to sticking around and talking to everybody today.
Happy to have you back. And next up, Aaron the Grower.
What's up, panel? Jack, everybody, good to be back. Sorry I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but life grabs you and takes you sometimes. But I am here this week and I'm really grateful to be here and happy to see y'all. I'm Aaron the Grower, atgacres.com, atgacres on Instagram.
We're happy to have you back. I even missed a week here semi-recently, so it is what it is. Life happens, and we're all just happy that you can make it when you can. So happy to have you back. And next up, Noah the Grower.
Hey everybody. I'm Noah the Grower from Instagram. You can find me there. And most weeks here, and happy to be here. How's everyone doing?
Doing great. Happy that your time change is going to allow us to see your garden a little bit later in the show. So people should stay around and tune in for that a little bit later because Noah's.
Oh yeah, I'm excited.
And I'll pass it next to Brandon Rust.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brandon Rust. You guys already know me. If you guys aren't familiar and you're listening, you can find my work at Instagram at rust.brandon. You can check out www.bokashiearthworks.com. And yeah, it's always a good day when you get to hang out with the panel members and nerd out on weed stuff.
I love it. It's like a Brady Bunch of weed with the 9 people. I don't know. I can see us all on the Zoom, but it doesn't show up like that on the YouTube. But it is definitely a great time hanging out with all of you, including Matthew Gates.
Yeah. Hey, everyone.
Where can the people find you?
Well, you can find me on the Aquaponics, Potent Ponics' Aquaponics conference. I just got finished a little while ago presenting about that. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, Zentanol, and on my Instagram at SyncAngel.
Great stuff over there. Big fan of Potent Ponics and the YouTube channel and all the conference stuff that's been put out there. Really appreciate all the free information and your information as well. And last and certainly not least, the American one.
Hey, Jack, everyone, good to be here. Everyone in chat, I'm glad you guys are hanging out again. I'm the American one on the YouTube and the American one _with_18s on the IG. And it's great to be here. And yeah, Matthew, I caught your presentation yesterday and that was just very intensive and extensive and went through everything. It was amazing. But hopefully the recording can be saved somehow. And then you redid it again today, kind of, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I agree. I actually feel like I performed better on the first one than the second. Also, a little bit more time. So hopefully they can get it. But if not, they have that other one too.
Yeah, because I asked a couple questions in chat, and before they could even present them to you, you covered it thoroughly in your original presentation. So really, really great.
I'm really happy to hear that the good information is definitely getting out there to the people, and it just goes to show, his definitely very well researched. And sometimes it's like when you raise your hand, about to ask the teacher a question, and then they cover what you're about to ask. So it's you just got to let them get to that part of the lesson. And Matthew is spitting facts to the people out there, spreading the good IPM knowledge, and I'm really happy to see that you're connecting in other communities on top of just this one. So it's really good information. So I'm happy that people are listening up and people like Tower asking good questions, but even if they didn't require being answered. But with that said, I want to pass it to Kyle Breeder, because I know many weeks you were quiet, but we have a good topic that we want to talk about a little bit this week. You went to the Harvest Cup, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about how that went.
Yeah, it was it was actually really cool, man. I had my own booth there, which went really well. And some of the cool things that happened, other than me being truly honored and excited to meet anybody that has ever watched our show or has followed me there, that really meant a lot to me. I gave a lot of free stuff to some people, and but Mike Tyson showed up. Yeah, so I saw him, and he was walking by, and I was basically like, oh man, I gotta, I know he's got farms. I was like, I gotta give him some genetics. So I made a care package, and I walked up to him, and he was like, I was like, Mike, I was like, how's it going? I was like, here's I'd like you to have this. Like, and he kind of looked at me, he turned around, he's like, what's that? You had to kind of see his face, but he was like, I was like, oh, it's my work, it's my company, my genetics. And so he looked at me again, and he took it and he put it in his duffel bag. I was like, hey, I made it in.
Badass.
Yeah, so wicked cool to see. It's so weird to see celebrities in real life, man. Like, especially like in arm's reach, especially Tyson. Like, Tyson's the shit, man.
I was just gonna say, this is not just a celebrity we're talking here, man. That is such an
Tyson,
honor.
International
Mike Tyson
superstar.
was, when we were kids, man. Iron Mike. I mean, the video game Punch Out. I mean, Mike Tyson's awesome, dude.
And he's come out so pro cannabis too that it's just he gets better.
Yeah.
Dude, his weed's actually good. It's one of the only ones in the legal market I could actually get behind. If you get the Toad from Tyson Farms, that shit is strong as fuck. It's like a Gorilla Glue Chem Cross or something like that. But it is it's some good shit. I've definitely had some of the Tyson Ranch. He spent some inordinate. You can Google how much does Mike Tyson spend per month on weed or something like that.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
like articles
stupid.
people were. He was giving him and all of his homies so they could sample to see what's good and what's not, to try and put out better shit. So I think he's a real passionate advocate, and it's really like Noah and everybody else has kind of said he's a huge, like, he's a legend. He still got it too. I mean, in some of his fights recently, like in some of the footage, I would be scared to be on the other end of a punch from him. So it's cool that you got your seeds in his bag.
Yeah, he didn't look he didn't look that weathered at all in person, man. He still looks pretty primed up if you want to do something about something. You know what I mean?
Well, he's got a fight coming up. I believe, against Logan Paul. And I'm like, huge.
They went through with
Oh
that.
my! If that
I'm a
happens,
huge
Logan
Mike
Paul will
Tyson
die.
fan. So I'm uber jealous, man. That is awesome.
That's so crazy. But yeah, so other than that, that was a really big highlight. Just to see him in person, and he grabbed my genetics. I mean, there's a small percent chance that maybe he pops and brings it to his farm, but whatever. At least it's a seed planted. But so I started John from Green Bodie, which meant a lot to me. And man, that guy is more humble in person than he is online. And just a really good person. I gave him a bunch of stuff that we basically did a collaboration on. And other than that, I met Mr. Soul and his partner today. Actually, his partner was there yesterday, and I had went up to him, and I don't know if you guys remember, I have that letter written by him back in like the 1990s, and I was like, hey, do you remember this? And he was like reading it. He's like, yeah, I do. He's like, I do remember reading it. He's like, I remember writing that. I was at 19, and he said the year 90 something. He's like, I was like, well, I have those genetics, man. They're still in that cigarette pack that you put in that box. And he was like, are you serious? And we started talking. He's like, well, it would mean a lot to me if you could get those. If they pop, it'd mean a lot to me if you could share those back with me. And I was like, of course, man. I was like, I'll totally. He's like, I don't have those anymore. I was like, well, so that's my new mission now. And I guess he's willing to do. I was talking about doing like working together on a project. So Mr. Soul and his I feel so horrible. I forget the guy's name, but his second partner. We're gonna be kind of all working together. But yeah, just wicked cool, man. I got a picture. I'm gonna post it tomorrow morning of me and Mr. Soul, and we talked for like maybe half an hour, and just really cool, man. Just to be like in my world, I guess like somewhat of the elites, of what I do, and just to be in that presence, and we all got along, and it went really well. It really meant a lot to me. So the whole experience was just really nice overall.
he bred some fire shit. The Cinderella 99 is still some of the strongest stuff I've gotten to smoke as far as sativas go. And it's like
Yeah.
a fast flowering and shorter structure than most traditional like sativas as far as that hybrid or whatever spectrum would go. And he had a unfortunate, like, he was like attacked randomly, or I don't know,
I heard
people
about that.
might argue, but he like was on the, brink of death and thankfully ended up surviving. So I'm glad that he's still with us because we've lost many great breeders and a lot of them are aging and they're not going to be around forever. So it's cool to get to meet them in person, make those connections and potentially share genetics back to them that they've lost and give them options. Cause like he bred a lot of the stuff that, like I said, Cinderella 99 and others that were used in some of Subcool's work, which is also some of my favorite stuff. So it's awesome that you got to connect with them.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. It was an awesome event, and we'll see what's to come from all that.
Did you see any of the cheap home grow audience that of name that you could think of, or just people generally saying like, "Oh, I have listened to you for"?
Yeah, there was like, man, there was at least 9 people total that were like that drove from like one from Pennsylvania, one from New York, one from Maryland, one from Maine, from Vermont. They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, how? They're like, oh, I follow you. I'm like, yeah. How'd you find me? They're like, oh, I've been listening to your podcast for a while now. I'm like, well, how long's a while? They're like, since the beginning. I was like, wow, that's a long time.
That's
Yeah.
fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and some, yeah, it's just really awesome. So a lot of those people that drove that far, I gave them like free shirts and free hats, and I tried to hook them up the best I can. So
That's awesome,
was-
man. It's
yeah,
great to see the community. There's a ton of committed followers of the cheap home grow. A lot of people I've seen that you could just look at the names in the chat. I bet you if you went back and listened to like episode 10, you'll see a lot of the same names that are in the chat right now. So it's amazing the community that we've built. And when they're able to, I mean, it's not even like they were like, oh, you're right down the road or like an hour away. It's like they committed, they really went for it and drove all the way down there. And it's awesome to see that they had a probably great time, I'm sure, as you did. It sounds like the Harvest Cup went really well by all accounts. And I saw even Sour Diesel Tangy, I think, entered some of
Yeah.
Brandon's stuff.
yeah. He came up to me and said he was involved, and we were all hoping that it won, especially for Brandon's sake too. And you're gonna have to reach out to him because I don't remember. I was trying to figure out how to talk to 6 people at once without someone leaving the booth. Because I obviously wanted to give them all their own attention and make them feel important and stuff, but or give them the attention they deserved. But I'm not too sure. But one thing I found really interesting, I forgot to mention this, is there was 3 or 4 people that came up to me and they were like, yeah, oh, I run your gear. I'm like, oh, like what? And they're like, and they would show me their phone, man. And they had every cross that I've ever released ever. Like, yeah, I have the whole thing. I was like, damn, dude, I don't even have some of that stuff anymore. He's like, yeah, and all positive feedback too, man. So it was great. But you actually, you should reach out to Brandon. Did you reach out to Sour Diesel and about if you placed,
No, I don't know. I guess I could DM him.
Yeah.
I bet you he'll be in chat later this evening if he's not already. I don't see him right now at the very moment. But I wanted to also say a shout out to Hota Herb. I heard you got to meet Hota and he actually grew out some of your stuff and gave you a little sample, right?
Yeah, he came by. He showed me some of the poison rock candy. It was one was more of a bushier, not bushier. One was a heavier yielding pheno. One was like more of he called it the praying pheno, which it definitely prayed the whole flower. They were both iced out, but one was like extremely like a keeper cut. And I was like, hey man, I know this sounds weird and you're like growing the seed, but like, can you take a cut? Cause I want a cut so I can back cross it to my mother. So he showed up, and what's weird? When he first showed up, he was like, I don't know if it was like he always wears these crazy hats. He had like some new hat on, and he was just standing there staring at me. And I thought I was like a weirdo, not a weirdo, but I didn't know who it was at first. And he was like, and he kind of pulled down his mask or something. I was like, oh, what's up, man? He's like, hey, and he had like all these gifts. He's like, yeah, here's your. I was like, oh, I forgot you were coming, man. I forgot about the whole thing. I just been so flustered with the event. And yeah, he gave me 2 clones of that rock candy, that true New England rock candy, not poison rock candy. I don't know why I mentioned that. It's true. He had the true New England rock candy. And yeah, he gave me some samples of that, and he dropped me off some clones, and he dropped off some slaps, as we all call them, some stickers, and I had them on my table so that people could see them. And yeah, he's a really good dude, man. Really just a calm, collective, really relaxed guy, man. He's a really good person.
I get a Zen vibe from Hoda.
Oh, wicked Zen. Yeah, like Buddha. Yeah.
he's like super at peace. I get that from Spartan Grown and many others on this panel as well. But Brandon, I'm curious if you wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think it was Blueberry Train Mac was the cross that he entered.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like it. I'm growing it too.
What kind of profile does that have when you grow it?
So there's depends on which way it leans, but if it leans more on the Blueberry Train Wreck side, because the genetics are this, it's Blueberry Train Wreck, which is NorCal Train Wreck times F4 Blueberry. We had a specific cut that we were running of that, and then that was crossed into MK Ultra. So most of the time you get this really, really sweet floral blueberry with a really distinct pine scent in there too. So it's a very sweet blueberry pine, and it's kind of like not like cotton candy, but it's very has like kind of like
Like an artificial almost.
yeah, like I don't it's not like the grape, like like what we would like methylanthenolate, right? That's not what it is. It doesn't seem like that to me, but it could be. I mean, it's just not as pungent as some of the ones that I know for certain have that chemical in it,
I was going to ask if the pine was similar to the train wreck. Does that like the pininess
Yeah.
is a similar that same pine that you get in the train wreck?
Yeah, where it's kind of pine, but it's got that musky, like that musky, earthy undertone to it,
Yeah, definitely. And I get it some sharpness. I think there's like terpenoline in train wreck. It's like a little bit like that floral, but that comes from the blueberry side as well. So it sounds like a really interesting cross. I think I actually might even have some of these seeds. I'm gonna have to start popping some of them because you sent me.
This stuff is really good. I like it a lot. I'm gonna keep growing it. I found a really, really nice male, so I'll do an F2 generation eventually with it.
Anything I've had that crossed in the MK Ultra has been pretty potent. So it lives up to the name, I guess, a little bit.
There's outliers in it that I haven't seen pop up, but lean a little more toward the MK, and it's got this like rotten oniony body odor. So instead of you get this like sweet blueberry with like this rotten onion odor to it. Not unsimilar to my onion burger cut, which is the Purple Kush times MK Ultra. That one, if you were to go and smell GMO and smell the onion burger just knocks it out. Like it's night and day difference as far as the pungency of it.
Just more like actually onion on the onion burger that cross that you have.
Yeah, and it's just very, very sharp. It's very pungent. Like if you walk into or even come close to the plant, you can smell it before you get up to it.
Have you smelled like Chem D?
Not pure Chem D, but I have I've grown crosses with Chem in it.
Yeah, some of those chems can get like really foul. I think it's Chem D that has some of those nasty, funky, almost like dead body. There's like Dumpster is another cut that was big in, I think, Ohio originally, and it smells literally like a dumpster. Like there's some really interesting foul notes that come off of some cannabis strains that people really enjoy. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting one.
Surprisingly, though, I found a really nice Kush Mints pheno in the pack that I ran too. It's really, really nice, which I wasn't really expecting.
That's from JBZ, right?
No, that was from Modern Epigenetics.
Wow.
It was
Hey,
like
Brandon.
well, it was those they used like real cuts, and then the guy did a reversal, I think, with the runts on I think the Cushman's 11.
Hey, Brandon, you get any real skunk smells out of anything at all? Anything that you're playing with?
The only time that I've ever really experienced what people smell as skunk is usually after a certain type of cannabis has been burnt, and it's like, you can like smell distinct different cannabises sometimes by like the smell. Like when I walk into a room, like and I hadn't been smoking, I
Right.
can often tell like what was being smoked,
Yeah.
and so for me, it's like
Even when you were younger, you didn't have with the real skunk?
people who don't smoke weed, or people who are not as familiar with it, I think those kind of notes might be a little more distinct, because they're unfamiliar to them,
Or
so that,
interpreted as skunky when they're not
yeah,
necessarily. Like
yeah,
everybody that I know who doesn't smoke thinks like all cannabis smells skunky to them. Like when they smell somebody smoking in the distance, or if they smell it in a bag or in a room, they're like, "Oh, it smells so skunky." I think because they're like almost trained to think that
They don't,
weed smells like
yeah,
skunk.
they got the wrong definition of skunk. Right.
I had
But
for like a
Brandon,
while a disassociation of like smell with that's similar in the opposite direction. I used to use what's called like a sploof or a zoom tube where you blow smoke through like a paper towel roll or a toilet paper roll that has dryer sheets on the end to cover up the
right,
smell of the
right.
smoke. So for a while, when I'd have like fresh laundry or other things that the dryer sheets, I'd even just smelling the dryer sheet, I'd be like, "Oh, this smells like weed or cannabis." But ultimately, it was just my association with them always being smelled together. But even like the fresh dryer sheets that didn't smell anything like cannabis, I started thinking, "Oh, that smells like cannabis." Sort of like people think all cannabis might smell like skunk. They're just
Right.
mentally committing it to that brain association, I guess.
But Brandon or Jack, you had real skunk weed, right? That
That's
smelled
all I
like
had
skunk and smoked
for a
like
long
real
time.
and smelled. Yeah, all right.
So I went into my high school
I
and
know it's real.
my vice principal was like, he called us out from like 15 feet away. One, our eyes were a little bit red, but he's like, "It smells like one of you assholes just ran a skunk over on the fucking road. Like, come like get the fuck out of here." We are like at like a basketball game or something, all high as shit. And we got called out real quickly, but he smelled it for sure. And it was skunky skunk. So
Yeah.
the herb smelled
It's
like it pre-smoked and when it was smoking. It
right.
just
That's what I mean. Fresh. It smelled like skunk. It's that shit's real. Yeah. I can't believe no one because so many people now are running so many different strains everywhere. And like I forget what meme, what if someone found it, they wouldn't shut up about it if it was real.
Well, that's what they got. One dude, Blue Skies Vienna, is kind of like that.
Right.
He's like gotten like 50 accounts blocked, and he's like, "I got
They're
the real
like
skunk from Old Timer,"
it's
and
like
he's just fucking
burnt
sending out
rubber.
packs. But
well, we know that the dude's full of shit, because you can see old timers on some of those posts straight up tell people like, nope, this shit is not true.
it's interesting. Maybe it's just the mental connection because like I know people that have run the Blue Skies Vienna that I do have some respect for. Like Kineos Genetics got a pack, and they said that they found some skunky and burnt rubber, things like that. But I don't know. I think sometimes when you go in expecting a smell, maybe you are mentally committed to that smell. Like if somebody says, "Oh, this is some strawberry haze or something," and you grow it and it doesn't smell like strawberries, like the grower might be like, "Oh yeah, it smells so much like strawberry, right?" And everybody else is like, I guess," but maybe it doesn't smell like strawberry. But in some cases, it actually really does. So I think that's why it's always best to give somebody a sample and say, "What does this smell like?" You don't offer up a suggestion and taint their potential opinion
The
of it.
clo- the closest thing that I have is, as far as the varieties that I have, are some old Romulan MK Ultra crosses that smell really funky and nasty. But it's not like skunk, because to me, when I smell like a real roadkill skunk, right, and I smell them all the time because I live out in I drive out in the back country of Oklahoma every day. It's like kind of a sweet, arid, pungent, and then it has like this rancid, that like musk, you know what I mean? And the only thing that I have that really comes close are going to be the things that are like really garlicky or really oniony, and they kind of smell like just funky, but it's not really that same like combination where you're getting kind of the same beginning sweetness and then this arid putrid musk. They're just different, so, but it could be interpreted by so many different people, so many different ways. But my interpretation is, based off of my experience that I have on a daily basis driving by these road-killed skunks, because I do it on a daily, like every day there's skunks on the road.
Is it possible that different skunks have different varieties of compounds that change the smell of their spray?
Not that I noticed. I smelled more than one hit skunk, and they smell totally similar, if not
Me
exact.
too,
right?
but me too. But if you submit it to a terpene test,
It's not a terpene. It's like a thiol or something. They've done the testing. They know what
It's
the skunk
just
spray
one
is.
compound.
No, it's not one. It's a combination. But there's also esters that are in it.
And I wonder how volatile those compounds are compared to something like some of the terpenes that are more stable. Because the question would be then, can we have these really highly pungent plants that we can smell even at a distance, but those compounds be so volatile that they, change or don't even stick around altogether.
So I was going to say, roadkill skunk, kind of insinuates like a necrotic smell with skunk, but like spray skunk, if you've ever been sprayed with skunk, that's way more potent than roadkill skunk.
Yeah, because roadkill skunk is usually something that's been out for a little while, unless it's fresh, but
yeah,
you do get that, do get that spray mixed in with
Really,
decay.
So
I really think it's
the actual
better.
chemical. Sorry, go ahead, Spartan.
I just wanted to say, I really think as a breeder, especially anyone that's an up and coming breeder, it's way better to have a target, maybe chasing a high or chasing a flavor type or a smell type, and just try to create something that you're looking for end product. And if that is skunk, then that would be skunk, but don't be influenced by other people. Go by what you're looking for and go by what you think skunk is, and just don't listen to all the chatter and the noise, because it doesn't matter what you have or what you create. There's always going to be 30 guys telling you it's not what you say it is. So just do you and ignore that stuff, because I think so many people don't even want to breed because of how
Critical.
tightly contested it can be on the breeder side, and how I don't know. It seems like what should be done would be like, whatever name you come up with to name a strain, just put your name behind it. So like, if we're saying skunk, I can say Spartan grown skunk. You know what I mean? And then that solves everything. And then you don't have to worry about, oh, I got this from so and so and so and so and so and so, and that proves that this is what it is. It doesn't prove anything. It's still just taking somebody's word. So I don't know. I think it causes more frustration and less progression by arguing over it than to just do your thing.
Well, I don't think people are going to find the seeds that made that skunk, but if you go running lines of everything, like that skunk could pop up in something that you didn't know was there. That's kind of what I'm like, was asking Brandon. I know he's running many seed, that he could have came across one that was literally skunk, but it might not have been the whatever they said the original skunk was, but it could be, because it's cannabis, could be a different skunk all its own. But if you know that dead skunk smell, you would know it if you grew it out, for sure.
Oh, and I'm always looking out for it, but I
bet.
I find stuff that's really interesting that might be able to be interpreted as that, but it's not like that dead on. Like, and then here's the thing too, just because it smells like that when it's, flowering,
growing,
those things change as
that's so true.
Plants dried and it's, pruned, trimmed up and put in storage. So
that's one of the things I was going to bring up, though. I think it's like several phases. I don't think you're just like, if I was hunting a bunch of Jack the Ripper, which is not known to be skunky, I'm not going to expect to find skunky stuff. I would look for where you think it's going to be most likely and search those bases first. But the chemical is actually called mercaptan. It's spelled like that. It's like what they put in the gas line so that you can smell gas. MERCAPTAN. That's found in cannabis. I've probably posted somewhere on my page. If not, I'll do it sometime tonight. They found that in chemical tests in cannabis, as well as in skunk spray, as well as in gas lines.
What's
So
it
some
called?
people even mercaptan, MERCAPTAN. So that's one of them, but there's like ethyl mercaptan. There's a bunch of different chemical varieties of it. One will smell more burnt rubbery. One will smell more skunky. One will smell more like rotting flesh or something like that. There's a whole bunch of I don't know what the technical term is, but like isomers,
Derivatives
maybe
of it.
derivatives, yeah, whatever it is. There's a bunch of different varieties of it, but that is one of the main things that I've found concrete evidence. It's in both in cannabis as well as in skunk, and that
I'll
smell
tell you
is
what.
something we've identified.
I had a plant that smelled like it was literally a tire on fire, like potent stank. And that was like the closest kind of penetrating smell that skunk had, but it definitely was not real skunk. It was like I'm saying, like plastic on fire. But yeah, I'm
Yeah, it
really
could be.
interested in that.
Autoflower called Tire. That was the strain name was called Tire Fire from.
There you go.
Star.
I think a lot of Afghani stuff has some of that scent to it. Another thing I
Yeah.
wanted to mention was on top of genetics, there is the curing, drying process, and even just like the production. Back when a lot of the skunky stuff was around, at least where I was at in Ohio, a lot of the indoor cultivation, it's mostly HPS. Not everybody had great air conditioning. I think some people were running the rooms a little bit hotter than they should have. And some people theorize that running it hotter might bring out a stress in the plant that creates some of those, whatever it is, diols or esters, alcohol aldehydes. There's so many different little possibilities. And I'm not saying it's just mercaptan. That's part of the profile, but that's just something that I've know provably is both in cannabis and in the skunk aroma. So, but on top of the growing it in a hot environment, I think transporting it, like a lot of the stuff, whether it's Mexican brick or it was beasters grown in Canada, dry sifted, and then sent to people in Ohio. And, that method isn't happening. It's still happening, but I would say it's probably not happening as much. So I think we're seeing less cannabis that was poorly aged, almost like I don't know if you guys ever had beer in high school before you were supposed to, and people would like hide it in their trunks and shit, and then it would get hot and it would get cold. It would get hot and it would get cold, and then it would become what we call skunked.
Skunked. Yeah.
Yeah, and it tastes like shit, right? So
It sure
that's like
did.
not a process most people are doing with like their cannabis right now, but it does happen from time to time. Like people leave it in their car, and sometimes like you leave it in your car for a day, it gets like that heat up, and you pop that jar in there, and you like smell it. You're like, holy shit, this like opened up a bunch from the heat. So I don't know. There's so many different factors to the whole skunky thing, but I do think a big factor that we didn't discuss so far tonight was a lot of people stopped smelling it or growing it because people identify that as the smell of cannabis. So it was immediately, either a skunk or a cannabis grow. So cops would they'd go investigate whether it's a dead skunk or cannabis grow, because it'd be a big bust for them if it's a cannabis grow. So a lot of those people that were growing that cultivar or those strains, they literally ended up in jail, and those plants got cut down, and those seeds are either in the police seed vault somewhere or just completely destroyed. So a lot of it either stopped being grown or got killed by police. So I think that those are like sort of my
also-
3-part theory of why skunk is so hard to find nowadays. A lot of these processes that are not happening anymore.
Yeah, and I think that's also like what you were just talking about. There might be the whole cause of people keeping skunks for pets. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's the only reason I could think of ever wanting to have a skunk for a pet. But
I hear you can de-skunk them. They like get their glands
yeah,
removed.
they pull the glands out, but still, man, it's like, I don't know.
They're admittedly cute. I have a security camera, and there's like
Oh, they're
6
cute, but
little
they got
babies.
claws, man. They got claws.
Yeah, they could tear into you, but I guess that's true for a lot of animals.
San Diego, I think, has both types of skunk. There's I think one has like the broad stripe, and then there's the other one. They have like one has a fat tail, and they're a little bit different. But there are 2 types of skunk, at least in the U.S. And it's funny because we have some listeners in the U.K. who don't have any skunks. I was talking to Green 13 one time. It's like, dude, all of this talk you guys talk about, we have no fucking idea, because I've never smelled a skunk in my life. And I'm like, I can't wait till you travel and smell one. And you're just like driving down the road, like, what the fuck is that smell? Like, he'll probably think it's some, ganja or whatever, because maybe he's come across some at a point in time. But it's definitely an interesting thing that certain people don't have them at all. And like I said, they do have them in San Diego, and we have a little neighborhood, and I catch them on camera every so often trotting around. And you definitely don't want to startle them and get sprayed.
That's why I think it's funny when I learned that same thing. And because we were talking about that was a common slang for weed was skunk over there. So to them, that's really all skunk really ever was. It was never associated with an animal because, like you said, they're not on the island. So and they never have been. So
Well, and the strain Sam the Skunk Man brought over allegedly,
Yep.
you know, from Sacred Seeds or whatever. I think it was 80s or 90s, and then Skunk number one, I think, won the Cannabis Cup in 1988. I could be incorrect about that, but it won the first ever Cannabis Cup was Skunk number one, and so the name Skunk, whether it smelled like skunk or not, had entered into the cannabis existence in a strong way. And like you said, people in the UK didn't even know it because the smell of the skunk, it by that time actually had been bred to a point where I think it's still at currently now. If you find skunk number one, like anything labeled skunk number one, to me typically smells very sweet and piney. It's usually high yielding and a very potent, high amounts of THC. Something about skunk number one, it doesn't have CBD at all. It doesn't have the ability to produce any CBD, so there's zero CBD synthase. That's why THC is so high in it. But it doesn't actually tend to smell like skunk, and so that's why I think there's, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of confusion with the Kyle Breeder dropped out. So I gotta add him back into the chat here. With the
That's one
actual
of
name
the-
skunk though.
That's one of the things that I don't see a lot of people doing is pine stuff anymore. And I love pine weed. That was some of my favorite stuff. I remember grew this stuff called Jaw Love, and it was super, super piney, and it tasted like what white sage smells like. And it also smelled like white sage after it was burned, ironically enough, too.
I like
missed
piney
that.
stuff. I had actually just attempted to start some 79 Christmas Bud and Pine Tar Kush. They're inbred lines. And to be honest, I did not re-amend my soil for my solar cups. I was trying to go like no-till. I sprinkled a little, my earthworm castings got eaten by ants, like I probably told you guys a few weeks ago. So I didn't refresh it with earthworm castings, which usually gets me through that solar cup phase. And they just were really, really growing slow. So I'm going to go re-clean up the veg space and get some good soil. And I actually decided to pop something different this next round, but I'll be growing those. I have more of the pine seeds. I ended up calling all of them, even though 100% germination, and they just were growing super, super slow. And I can't say that's 100% because they're inbred. It was probably 80 to 90% because they were in shitty soil. So, but it just reminded me that if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right and start over and do it proper. So anyway, that's my take on the pine so far. I'm definitely curious because that's something alpha pining has been known.
I have a cut of that Christmas, that 79 Christmas pine. I haven't run it though. I just have a mom of it. I've just been like, haven't even done anything with it yet.
I got a few packs of it from, or well, I should say a pack from CSI Humboldt. Their regular line's called Pirates of the Emerald Triangle. And like I gifted some to my brother and he started growing, but then his wife, who's not a cannabis person, found out that he was growing and it made him kill all of his plants. So
Oh my God. Tell him to
Uh,
put on his pants one leg at a time and take him away from his wife. No, I'm joking. But
he's in a
Brandon,
state where it's
you
not
missed-
quite open yet, you know, and he's got
you
a big
missed-
job, whatever.
You missed the time frame, Brandon. You're supposed to have that stuff ready for December 25th, boss.
People appreciate it whenever.
I know. I'm only messing. I just messed with you both. Sorry. I love you guys.
I think pine stuff is definitely really not, it's a clear smoke for me, depending on the strain, but it tends to be pretty like uplifting, clear, giggly even sometimes. But I'm definitely a fan of just the flavor and the aroma of it. And alpha pinene, I think, has been shown to counteract some of the forgetfulness associated with THC. So that's always a good thing. Don't have some of that short-term memory loss that might be associated with cannabis use on occasion. Like, where did I put my keys or my coffee or my hat?
yeah,
Maybe when it's on your head.
I'm excited. I'm fucking smoking my outdoor. So I'm smoking that Sparkle Face outdoor right now. I started with a joint. I smoked, I think it was 2 bowls, and I'm grinding up some more to keep going, but I'm fucking high. I'm high on just that. So I am excited about that. That doesn't usually happen from flower.
I love that when you get fresh harvest of something, your body's not used to it at all, and you're like 0 strain tolerance. It's some dank homegrown because you put all your love and time into it. So that's how I was smoking on
That's the
Tazzy
thing,
Aces like
dude.
that.
I didn't do much to this, not in the growing part. Well, of course, the harvest and all that, but I mean, this was like literally, I gave it no nutrients at all whatsoever. And I mean, it was in the natural soil, in the earth. So it was getting nutrients that way. But And it rained so much this year. I watered it 4 times its whole life. That's all I did. I watered it 4 times and cut it down.
That is efficient.
Yeah.
It's like Sunbolt, the dry farming, you know, some people don't have to water their plants at all. It's amazing. I think that's even better, honestly. The less you have to water it, the better. And it's cool that you had to do minimal inputs. And
Well, normally I would, if I'm running, see, I didn't run it like I run a production. Like if I was running production outdoor, I would have been slamming it with 5 gallons of water every fucking day, you know, as long as it was looking good, at least from the early on, and then maybe even more. But the approach I took on this was I was trying to keep it below a 6-foot fence. So I trained it down. I put it in a trellis net, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to push it. I'm just going to wait until it droops or shows signs that it needs water before I'll water it. And it never drooped. It never fucking drooped. So, I mean, the times that I watered it, I probably could have got away with not watering it, but it just hadn't rained for a while. And I was like, I better get some water on it, even though it hadn't drooped.
Yo, have you guys experienced plants like that? They tricked me a couple times. This thing would be totally bone dry, and the leaves were almost like praying. They were standing up fine. And I was just like, you guys, what are you doing to me, man?
did you
Like,
ever
freaked
push it
me
though?
out.
Do you ever push it and just fucking
No,
wait till that
no,
very
I'm
last
telling
second?
you
And
though,
it's like,
dude, no, I think it was damaged, even though it still didn't droop. I'm telling you, that godbud plant, the godbud, I remember, and it's so deceiving because the plant's so small, but the leaves are so fat and huge. So like, it doesn't even feel like it needs water because it's such a short plant, but those leaves are just pushing out, like, I guess, you know, they're just transpiring. And yeah, it got dried out, but they don't droop. It was just so bizarre. It freaked me out like more than once. I picked it up.
Not to the extent that you're saying it, but the Mac 1 is that way. Like it can get
Okay.
real dry before it gives me any indication. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's
heard that's why
scary
it
to
grows
me.
so
Yep.
slow. You almost have to like barely,
Force
it's almost like an
yourself.
aloe plant. You have to like give it little water to make it grow better. Ross the Jeff said it almost grows like dreadlocks worth of roots across the top. And like he said that it, for whatever reason, he let it get almost bone dry before you rewater it again, versus a lot of his other plants that were not like that. So it's interesting.
yeah, and
I
then
would agree with
he
that.
would hammer it. He would come back and just hammer it hard.
Hit it real hard. Yeah. When you did water it, give it a nice big watering. It's an interesting plant. It's definitely gained a ton of fame over the last few years. My next one coming down is Donnie Burger. We were talking a little earlier. Brandon was talking about his garlic burger that has that smell. The one thing I wanted to say, and I always like to remind the chat and the listeners, that GMO does not mean garlic, mushroom, onion. That is an association other people have made because sometimes their pheno may express those smells. The guy himself, Skunk Master Flex, has said several times, you can go look on his Instagram, that it's not garlic, mushroom, onion, is because of the Girl Scouts were like getting accused of using GMOs in their cookies and things like that. And also the plant kind of grew like a GMO plant. It's huge. It's crazy. It takes like 78 days to finish. It's not your typical cannabis plant that people are growing in today's world. So I think a lot of people look at GMO and are expecting garlic, mushroom, or onion, and then they might be disappointed. So I just like to give that reminder. But with that
What
said,
about grandpa's mouth odor? I've heard that one for GMO too. Have you heard that?
It does smell like garlic, though. That's the whole thing.
well,
GMO
I'm
smells.
not denying that there's garlic hues to it, but it's not named after garlic, mushroom, onion, which a lot of people think that it is, and it's not.
Yeah, it's just a pheno of garlic cookies.
From Mamico Genetics, which they were Fem, I believe. And they re-released those garlic cookies, Fems, like sometime last year. And they sold out very quickly.
He's got a pack of them. I told him, man, I said, I keep bugging him. He doesn't even have his room built out yet. I'm like, you gonna pop those yet?
The Donnie Burger is some fire stuff, which was the back cross of the GMO. And
yeah, we're gonna get a hold of that too. So he's got a pack of those. He's got a pack of the Donnie Burgers. So
I'm about to harvest mine maybe tonight or tomorrow. I don't know. It's getting real close. I always try to push it a few extra days or whatever, but it is definitely super loud, strong smell. It does have some garlickiness to it, but it's got some fuel as well, some gassy traits. I've always liked every pheno of Donnie Burger I've come across. So
me too.
It's
always got
definitely
me super high. So
potent stuff, and it yields pretty well. It's a pretty plant. It's got some
flavor.
purples,
I don't know if I would.
not all purple.
Do you enjoy the flavor? I don't know if I would say that I enjoy the flavor.
I've grown
that's
to.
the only
I think
negative I could say.
I like the actual garlic in food and culinary. So I do think that I enjoy that flavor, and I enjoy gas from like I kind of I'll say grew up on the West Coast, smoking a lot of OG, and there's a ton of fuel in that, which just it hits for whatever like they grow a ton of it out here still, and I think a lot of people are almost like hooked on that profile. So if it's not that, it has to be that plus something or like
Yeah.
combination.
Yeah, I see that.
I'm in that wheelhouse for sure. It's a great pain reliever for me. I think Kevin Jodrey, love him or hate him, correctly, I think said a lot of people he was working with were getting off opiates or painkillers, whatever it was, and cannabis helped them with that. And OG was one of the best out there for that particular thing. So that may be anecdotal experience or whatever, but I think the high, I would say, of OG is pretty narcotic in its effect. So it makes sense to me that somebody coming off of like an actual narcotic drug would be enjoying the similar effect that cannabis can provide. And I'll say this much more safely, which is a huge deal because too many people die every single day from opioid overdoses. So if you know anybody, reach out and make sure they get help because that's some real serious stuff and it shouldn't be taken lightly. But with that said, I don't know if we've got any questions from the chat or if we can
Yeah,
weave anybody in who hasn't got to talk.
somebody was asking Matthew to talk about hop latent virus, I believe it was in chat a way long time ago.
I have a question
was
too
Swamp
to add to that, Matt. Sorry to interrupt anybody. So somebody at the Harvest Club said that, and I don't believe any of it unless somebody says something otherwise, but that there was something on the market that is illegal to use, but is available somewhere that you can feed your cannabis plants that prohibits PM from growing on it. And I was like, I can see maybe like kind of like in a human form where you're giving it vitamins to try and help defend against it, but I don't know anything that you can feed in the root zone that would prevent plants from getting PM, unless I'm wrong.
I mean, sort of
Maybe
there is. I can tack those together. I'm sure that even Brandon has some examples of this that we could draw from. But
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, I made a post about powdery mildew infection and how it happens. And it became a great sort of forum in the comments about some of the things that affect this process. And there are things like silicon products and there are certain ways you could prime the immune system of the plant to be a little bit more resistive. But ultimately, you're always kind of relying on the plant, to deal with it, right? I mean, and if you want to be really pedantic, sure, you could spray it with some Luna Tranquility or one of the various azoles or other fungicides that are systemic and nasty. That'll certainly work, but I don't recommend that in cannabis for obvious reasons. But I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious if there was a more like specific product, like maybe a botanical fungicide or something.
Is it talk about Eagle 20?
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what's strange
Jasmonic.
about powdery mildew is like I hardly ever
I've never
see
seen
powdery
it yet.
mildew in people's systems. Like if I go and do consults and stuff like that, the only time I ever see powdery mildew is if their environmental controls are off and don't have enough air movement. That's like the main factor that I see.
Yeah, usually it's outdoors is where I see PM. That's usually what people battle in that.
I would say that I've seen enough situations where people just get it. I do agree that usually the places are very humid and there's not a lot of good airflow. Or if it's raining,
It
if
might
it's
be
really
region,
wet.
yeah, regionally specific because like I've
Sort
seen
of.
botrytis over and over in the wet. I've never seen powdery mildew in the wet here, and I've
Well,
had plants outside like in the wild totally.
I think that there is like a regional flux, right? It does change in different places. Botrytis, though, botrytis is super duper generalist compared to powdery mildews. Like,
Okay.
yeah. So like right now, there's a couple of different species that are confirmed. First of all, I want to just say up front, fungus taxonomy is a joke. Not that it's not important, but it's really hard to like delineate different species, which is important because you might get an overlap where one species, because they all look very similar, right? Like unless you're like getting down and genetically testing them, you're not going to really know for sure. But you might have one species that like infests maybe, let's say, 100 species. Another one infests like 90 of those species and 10 different species. And so their only functional difference is this discrepancy, which it's not going to matter to you because you won't know. But it will matter because you don't know which plants could be harboring it or whatever. And hop powdery mildew was recently described in cannabis up in Canada, actually, I think. So that, and they were talking about how it seems like compared to like lettuce powdery mildew, it seemed like it was a lot more narrow, the different plants that it can grow on, and they were speculating in the report that like maybe like a raspberry plant or some other plants that they know could also have the hop powdery mildew were in kind of the local area, so that kind of stuff is part of it. But botrytis can infect tons of different plants, whereas powdery mildews they tend to evolve to be very much more narrow. So even the more generalistic ones. But you were asking, Smart was asking about.
Yeah.
Wait, no, you go first.
I was going to say, did I distract you from the original question? I apologize.
No, but it's a good question.
Okay.
For sure. So hop latent viroid, actually, I decided against having a slide about it on the aquaponics conference that I was talking on because there isn't a whole lot of good information out there. So I just kind of feel uncomfortable to some degree. Like here's what we know. We know it is found in a lot of plants, especially in commercial nurseries. It's a big bugbear. It's very difficult to deal with. And a lot of people are kind of afraid about it. And I have seen some like, I guess I'll say that there are people out there who think that perhaps it is not such a big deal, or at the very least, it's not as extensively out there. But it's one of those things where you can't really tell visually. That's what makes it so problematic, is that the symptomology is super indistinct and it has viral latency. So like it says in the name, you might not even get the symptoms until it's already colonized your whole plant. And since the symptoms are not super like distinct, you might not even know it. Especially if you haven't grown that cultivar before, or you don't know what's normal, or if you're a new grower, and this is like, it's going to be very, very difficult to really know at all.
Like at Mint and Canico, they would know because they have like, oh, we harvest this plant X amount of times per year at this amount of pounds per light. And if it started just doing 25% less all of a sudden, which is, I've seen that or worse with hop latent viroid, it looks worse. It's producing lower amounts of cannabinoids and terpenes, less yield. So it is very serious in many circumstances. I would say it's just very difficult, like you mentioned, to identify because it's very subtle. I mean, it's like your harvest, it gets danker as it goes week by week, but it's like at those last 2 or 3 weeks, you're like, oh, it just doesn't look as good as it used to. Like it's such a weird phenomenon, but it's definitely damaging and can cost lots of money to commercial producers and even home growers ultimately.
That's an important point most people don't consider about regulation. Is as terrible as it is, and it is, I fucking hate it. It kind of pushes the science and it pushes everything forward. The good side of having to forcing us to test every single crop is that we have that data. We have that data that we can look back on and we can say, yeah, it's stuff that you wouldn't see with your eyeballs. You know what I mean? Like stuff like, yeah, why did we have, such a higher terpene percentage this time, or such a higher, we could pick out a single cannabinoid or something like that. And if we wanted to really get nerdy about it, we could get into every test and organize that and compare it on charts, and it could really drive us to make good decisions to continue with our business, obviously. So you can really turn a negative into a positive, at least in that way.
And there are
I
labs
typically agree.
testing. I'm
Oh
sorry,
no,
Matt.
you go first. You go first, Aaron.
Real quick, there are labs testing cannabis nationally under the hemp law, where you can ship them a sample and they will tell you the viral load in that tissue, and there's procedures for that and stuff. So I agree, Spartan. There's a lot of potential with the testing.
Yeah, and I'm also of the same sentiment that like, well, particularly cannabis is in a lot of ways is overregulated in a way that I don't agree with at all. But I have to admit, like, and it's sort of this like yin yang sort of problem. You know, there's these two forces fighting inside of me. One of them is this sentiment. The other one is the very like well documented fact that some pests and pathogens are just atrocious to deal with. And do you know how hop growers got rid of hop latent viroid? They didn't. They just decided to grow specific elite cultivars that are highly resistant to it. That's how they got rid of the problem. They didn't get rid of the problem. They just got a highly resistant selection of cultivars through breeding programs and things like that. Something that's not really accessible to cannabis currently, and in the future I expect it to be. But that also, there are ramifications for that too. And this was, of course, happening at a time when, which we now, a lot of plant cultivators and even breeders and other folk in the agricultural space recognize as maybe a problem, is that we were growing, that's kind of a narrow population, right? And I think people are understandably concerned that maybe what people will be able to grow economically will be an extremely truncated selection of what is possible or allowed. And this is even from a residential space. I really don't want to see that as much as possible. So, but there will probably be a couple of different solutions people will come up with. Shredder 0911 asked where the 90% infection rate estimate comes from. And that comes from a Dark Art Nursery article where they had selected a bunch of plants for testing. So they sampled a bunch of plants. It's not that, and this statement often gets like oversimplified as 90% of plants have hop latent viroid. No, 90% of the samples that they sampled had hop latent viroid, right? We have no idea, terrifyingly, we have no idea how extensive it really is. And I think that's the real problem. You can't really see it very well. You don't know what has it, what doesn't have it. And
it could be sitting there doing nothing and not, waiting for something to trigger it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe even, ostensibly we have plants that are resistant already, or have some level of tolerance, maybe, or whatever. There might be some, like botrytis is like this too, where it can reside in certain plants for a ton of time, have basically no detrimental effect, and then suddenly as soon as it bolts and starts to flower, boom, pathogenicity takes hold, sporulation happens. All these other problems happen. So like that could be happening right now, and we just have no way of assessing that. And as soon as the plant gets stressed out, then like you get this thinning, this stunting, lower terpene, lower cannabinoid content. And then by the time you recognize all that, it's probably already in all your other plants. So it's just kind of terrifying from that perspective. And I really think I'm biased, but I feel like it's better to err on the side of caution rather than like assume that it's just some hoax, because I don't believe so.
Yeah, what that looks like at the commercial side of things is tissue culture. It's sending samples. Every single thing that you're going to plan to go into a flower room goes to a tissue culture, and it makes sure that it comes back clean before you go and throw that into your production. And that is very, very expensive. So not everyone's doing it right now, but I think that's where it's going to go. That's where the industry's headed.
I think so.
That even like in a non-industrial.
Sorry, I wanted to give Kyle a chance to jump out, and then we'll get right back into this topic because he has to go at 8:00 his time. So that is 1 minute from now.
Right
so
now.
Kyle.
For sure.
Sorry, guys. I completely agree with you, man. I think TC. Oh, so interesting enough, I didn't bring this up. So TC I believe is the way. And I just talked to a guy recently, and I wish I'll listen to you've heard about this stuff. I was talking to a tour, amazing gentleman. We talked for like an hour before the show started. The next level. Well, what's the next level for seeds? It's like, well, man, wouldn't home growers want to just get the cuts? So, now we're looking at like, okay, well, what the hemp bill, the farm bill, and well, technically everything's THC, but then lawyers are saying, well, hey, you're still playing with fire and blah, blah, blah. And so we're talking about this stuff, and he's like, oh, well, this company's doing it now. I said, doing what? He's like, legally doing it. I was like, what do you mean by legally? So I guess there's a way you can get DEA certified through some kind of a program or something where they will allow you to start sending those cuts, knowing that they're THC still. And I was like, well, you're gonna have to do your own research. I can't really release. Basically, he wouldn't release who's doing it because that's where he's going, kind of trying to nab at that. So I could talk to that person too. But basically, it's happened. There's somewhere there's DEA approved process that you can start sending cuts legally without being in any kind of gray area with sending
It's Cigarette. It might be Cigarette International. There's a couple companies. I'll check.
Yeah, so I found that pretty interesting. I thought there's something else, but yeah, I have to leave. Basically, I still have so much unpacking to do, and I'm really sorry, you guys. I have to leave early. But I'm really happy we're all here, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, but I'm just really privileged that you guys all let me do this every week and allow me in here to do this, and then we can all still do it together. And I hope you guys all have a great week and safe week, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.
Have a good one, Kyle.
It's good to see you, Kyle, after a show. I can see you glowing like I feel like I'm glowing after those shows. It's so cool to just go out there and meet people.
It really is, man. I feel like somebody.
Recharge the batteries for sure.
Yeah,
We're proud of you,
thanks,
bud.
guys.
Have a good night, buddy.
So we were talking a little bit about hop latent viroid, and I think it's interesting that the hop growers decided to not address it, or maybe they tried everything they could to address it and they weren't able to beat it. So they said, hey, we've got to breed our way around this and make something resistant. And like you said, the cannabis cultivators are not at that point necessarily yet. If I was to bet on a horse in this race right now, I'd probably go with Oregon CBD. They've been doing some pretty crazy large breeding operations. And if there was going to be a group that breeds their way around it in cannabis, I think that it'll be them. I'm not connected with them anyway, but I've been impressed by them on a few occasions. The CBG stuff they've done and CBD stuff they've done in hemp has been very impressive so far. They use a lot of analytical data at the highest level to do it the right way.
Matthew, I got a
way
question.
around it. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you have a facility that does not have the virus inside your facility, if you keep everything in-house, it's obviously going to reduce the risk of getting it. But will they not get it if they don't bring in a cut or seeds that are contaminated from outside into the facility?
No, it's magic. It comes out of nowhere from another dimension.
All right, so
It's a vibe.
It's actually punishment from on high. Is the case. No, I honestly that is the case. Like that's the point. Is are you sure that that your given statement is true? That's what I think always messes people up.
Question mark.
Is that they're pretty sure. But yet somehow it still seems to happen, just like with pests, right? Like people will tell me, I'll be walking through a grow and they'll be like, yeah, we're pest free, and then I'll be looking through and be like, oh, what's that? So it happens.
Yeah.
But yes, essentially, yeah, like if you keep yourself cloistered, absolutely, like that'll definitely help you out.
Yeah, like I'm not going to take clones from anybody, I don't think, ever in my life.
Well, unless they can vaccinate them, right?
Yeah. Not saying that you shouldn't.
With Bavaria
This got us
Bassiana,
fucking demonetized.
Then again,
we're
if
never
people-
monetized anyway. We can say whatever the fuck we want, man. This is not a
If-
monetized show.
Well, then
If you have a contaminated garden already, then taking everything, right? That's the way to go around everything. If you get spider mites and
You solve for everything. And you just
Get
solve for
everything.
everything. Hope you don't get a virus.
yeah, take the new ones in at that point when you know you have stuff. So then they go through.
Just that's the Spartan way right there. That see who emerges, who can live through that. It's got to be a badass plant.
There you go. Yeah.
I will definitely go back to what they were kind of saying and Tao's alluding to. with growing from seed and starting in a clean environment. And I know Dr. MJ's got the New Year's Grow Challenge coming up, so even more reason to pop some seeds and grow along with some of the gromies out there on cocoforcannabis.com. And anybody else who's popping seeds, because like I said, I'm actually popping some Velvet Punch F3, which I decided I more urgently wanted to work with myself and do a test run myself before I send out any to testers. So that took the place of the Pine Tar, Kush, and 79 Christmas Bud. But Doc, do you have anything? I think you said you recently popped some stuff, but what are you planning for the New Year's Grow Challenge to get popped?
Yeah, and you were going to say something about hot plate and viroid, right? I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
If I hear my thoughts about what? I was asked 2 questions.
Sorry.
What seeds are you popping, and your thoughts on hot plate and viroid?
Because you were going to say something earlier, it sounded like.
I was going to talk about breeding your way around a disease with.
I'd love to hear about it.
Well, it just means it's a huge bottlenecking event. I think that you were kind of alluding to this earlier, Matthew, that like that basically means like you're down to the strains that have good resistance, and then they have to provide parental genetic material to like all the rest of the cannabis that we grow. So it creates a huge bottleneck. I mean, that's just, somebody also brought up bananas in the chat. And that's also sort of the case with them and other crops that, diseases or pests decimated. Oftentimes they're viral stuff, decimated, and then we had to find a resistant variety. It means we can no longer grow that variety anymore unless you can cross in the resistance, but even then it's sort of not the same variety. So there's a big consequence to sort of having to take that route in this war.
It's inherently different because everything is then at least partially. I don't know if CRISPR changes like more than 50 or less than 50%. It might be less, but in a traditional cross, I think you're getting at least 50% of the DNA from the resistant thing.
Yeah, but then you could keep back crossing it, right? So you could get like lower and lower as long as you hold on to that one trait. But there's a lot of genetic scrambling that goes on in this, and if we have to use, well, if you could use CRISPR, but nobody's really doing that with cannabis genetics right now.
Well, even other genetics, it's really difficult because what it comes down to is you need to have somebody on the ground who can identify this plant has the disease or doesn't have it, and it is reasonably shown that this one is resistant or this one is not resistant. So you need people, boots on the ground, that can identify those things, which takes a fairly intuitive person. A lot of these people are losing their asses. A lot of these crops are getting destroyed by some of these things, and people have no answers. They tried any and everything to know avail.
Right, to find the genetics that actually is resistant to that. There's an interesting story to where they found, they genetically engineer resistance to herbicides into crops, the Roundup Ready crops. They found the genetics that they could engineer in when they surprisingly found bacteria growing in their chemical waste pits, and they were able to figure out what sort of traits that bacteria had, what was the gene that bacteria had, and take it and engineer it into corn and soybeans and like all sorts of things that then can tolerate the application of that chemical. So finding the resistance is not guaranteed. I think there would be sort of some cultivars that had greater resistance to it than others. But yeah, these things. The other thing I wanted to say, and sort of thinking about this whole conversation, is cannabis is in such a different regulatory position than every other crop. I know we're used to thinking about sort of the heavy hand of government regulations on legal grows, but the prohibition of most cannabis cultivation means that there's no regulation. The doing prohibition, that's one of the big consequences of enacting prohibition-based policies, is that you can no longer regulate whatever it is prohibited because it's prohibited. And so it moves it into the black market. And there's a lot of things that they can do with like pest control measures and stuff like that with, on normal farms that I'm worried about sort of the ability of any kind of regulation to really having a significant effect on the cannabis market because most of it is prohibited.
I think I might have mentioned it on a different show. Somewhere where it is not so prohibited is up in Canada, and University of Guelph dropped another study. We might have even talked about it last week about the UV, and they showed the lower yield. Was that on the show as well? I think we might have discussed it here. I don't want to necessarily
Might have
repeat
been
it if
after I
it's something we
left.
got
I don't
into.
remember that.
So I should probably pull it up, but University of Guelph did a study where they had 3 hours of UV included. It was like 0.2 to 0.9 umol, and it showed the UV condition. And I think they tried a number of conditions, but that was just the one that they published in the study. It decreased not only the like cannabinoid and terpene yield, but also the like flower yield. So overall,
What
it just showed,
wavelengths? What, I mean, what type
I think it was
of
This
UVB.
was didn't Matthew, you shared this, didn't you?
Yeah. I think we were either talking about this or a different UV paper earlier, but I definitely had heard about it. I actually don't think I posted about it on Instagram, this particular one, where they were like increasing the UV spectra, and they were showing like there was a very descriptive diagram, or rather picture, of like the inflorescence when it was like lower to higher, and like the bud amount really tanked. It just really
Yeah.
got very small.
Her name was Plant PDX Girl, who originally
That's
shared
right.
that study, and I did repost it, but shamefully did not read more than what I posted, so I really can't comment on it much.
Interesting. I'd be interested in that. I've been lost in the world of the other end of the spectrum, out at far red and infrared and looking at extended PAR. So I've kind of got interest in getting down and really diving into the science at the shorter wavelength light, the UVA, B, and C.
So I pulled up the study on frontiers.org. Here's the article. It's University of Guelph, and they show, I don't have the actual photo that I saw earlier, but there's different levels of UV exposure. Hopefully I can click out of this. Zoom is blocking a whole bunch of stuff up. 1 second. Oh no, it's not allowing me to click out of this photo.
Strains.
Give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing screen and then I'll try and minimize this and get back to the actual study.
Someone was talking about some lighting company did a thing claiming that blurples are better for veg than any other lighting that's available. Did you guys hear about that?
I heard something about that too. They said in just veg only. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's,
veg. Yeah.
Blurple
I
was
didn't
better.
end up finding out the paper and shit, but
I would
that
have.
seems
It
Yeah,
sounds like
I-
somebody that wants to sell off their old stuff.
yeah.
That is a good theory there. So I figured it out. It was actually a different tab. So here's another photo of the increasing UV exposure level on low tide and breaking wave were the strains that they used. And here's another photo here. Increasing UV exposure level. You can see like this one, the leaves start to have sort of a negative effect over here.
What did you say the density of the UV light was? You talked
was
about it in
pretty
terms
low.
of like a quantity in micromoles, but I'd need to know the density. So how much space those micromoles are spread out over.
So I sent the actual link in the.
Yeah.
Can you
okay.
look at figure
Zoom.
8? Could
Here we
you
go.
click on figure 8 up there? Go up.
I just want to answer Dr. MJ's response question. So UV right here, they talk about. I thought that was the actual micromoles
I think
used.
it'll answer his question, which is why.
You said figure
Or maybe
8.
table 3. Maybe table 3 has that information.
Oh yeah, I think you're gonna find that in here. Let me
Let's see.
scroll
Is that
over
it?
full screen. P-value. Okay, on the left-hand side, my phone's blocking that up. Beta pinene. So these are terpene levels, THC.
No, never mind.
Yeah, this is
UV
the
treatments.
response in the plant. I'm thinking about what was the conditions of testing? What was the density of the UV light?
I
that they
thought
was
it
testing?
I thought figure 8 had the
You just passed it.
I'm gonna
I
go.
saw
I'm gonna
that.
go up to the actual abstract.
It would be in the
then
methods.
Good point. Good point.
The
Yeah.
methodology or
Here we go.
experiments.
225 umoles per meter per second squared. 18
Okay.
hours per light. 6-hour dark period.
That's a lot.
I think that might be
BPFD of
good.
400
Right,
micromoles.
Hold on. Is that the only amount that they were giving was 225 micromoles?
No, it must have increased over a gradient, I believe.
And what is that? Is that the average photon density? Is that the maximum photon density? Now, I'll have to read this, but there's some more information we would need to understand the actual dose of UV light that they were exposed to.
Yeah, I remember we had a paper about UV before that I had posted, and it caused quite a stir because I think something about in the methodology, like kind of made it a little bit moot because they like started with an already damaging. I forget what they were testing exactly, but essentially they started with already a pretty damaging level of UV, and they were
So this
trying
was
to make something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, keep going.
3.5 hours, 290 nanometers, 270 nanometers. They're showing a few of the different pieces of information here, but 3.5 hours. Like I had suggested in the past, I believe Uncle Reefer does 1 hour in the beginning and 2 hours at the end of their cycle and have found their best results with that, but they're not doing the same level of testing like the control conditions and experimental. I want to find there was a really good photo. I think Aaron the Grower might have said where they saw on Instagram, somebody posted it, if they're thinking of the same one that I'm thinking of, but it showed like, I think this,
this one.
right here, increasing UV light exposure. So look at the far right, the bud is tiny, shriveled up. It doesn't look very good.
Is that increasing density or time under the same density? Basically, my opinion is they're hitting them with too dense for UV light. That being at 250 or whatever it was, photon density for those wavelengths, that's a hell of a lot. I would expect a good density. I'd have to look for some real numbers, but sort of off the top of my head, I would think 100 to 150 would be like as much as you would need. So they're coming in at like twice as much of that.
I'm going to look up because they wrote, we have a minimum, a low, a moderate, and a high. So those were the exposure levels of UV. So I'm sure that they list somewhere the level.
That still doesn't tell us if that refers to density or time.
I would imagine they measured both. I think it's 3.5 hours for all, and I think they just
At different
increased the
densities.
amount.
Okay, that would be better. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So here it is, UV of ppfd, umule for meter squared, and you can see as it went higher, the things went lower. So I think it was just 3.5 hours. This is 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, and 0.8. So that's when I said earlier it was 0.2 to 0.9. That's the low end condition is 0.2, and I believe 0.9 is the high end condition. And the high end condition of 0.9 for that 3.5 hours was way too much. Obviously, the plants responded terribly to that. Right. I think the reason, as somebody else pointed out, I was on fucking talking shit with Eagle. They had mentioned the reason they believe to begin at just 3.5 hours was because some people, including lighting companies, are saying run it all 12 hours, run UV the entire time. We've got like one UV diode in there, so it's UV or whatever. So they're trying to push UV more than it's worth. So I think this was trying to show at a baseline, look, only 3.5 hours for the entire flowering cycle at such a small amount. They're not even going over 1 or whatever their measurement was. It was 0.2 to 0.9. Even at that low-ish amount, they have to be very careful because they're seeing negative results in their testing. So I think it was worth showing because they actually have the data, like we were talking about earlier, and they're in Canada, thankfully, less regulated now than I think they've probably ever been as far as being able to conduct science at universities and feeling comfortable and confident like this.
I will, coming from a university myself, caution you that most of the studies that we're getting are
questionable
dissertation abstracts. So it's a particular kind of science. It's usually good. It's usually pretty reliable stuff, but it's always good to read into the methodology. That's why I started asking a bunch of these kinds of questions to see what they're really showing. It's such a new field that I imagine their advising committees are stretched fairly thin in terms of their ability to really supervise all of the research that's going in all of the different directions. So it's up to the reader when you're reading dissertation work. I'm not sure that this study is, but some of the other stuff that I've seen coming out of Guelph is to do your own due diligence and make sure that they've set up the experiment well.
I got poked fun at this. It is Guelph, I believe. One of the Canadians told me that at least. Maybe I'm mispronouncing it, or maybe it is Guelph and I'm fucking it up. But one thing I wanted to go back to is now that I kind of have an understanding of the UV conditions, it is interesting to look because it says increasing UV exposure. So now we know, I think it's 0.2, and I don't know what the two middle conditions are, but I know the top one is 0.9. How much smaller this low tide and breaking wave plant
This doesn't
are.
make sense though. So when did they start applying UV? During veg?
I need to go back to the study to
I
find
hate
that.
to derail it,
Because
but
what it
that
looks
picture,
like, I mean, your plants
did you see
don't
that?
shrink. We can't believe that when they started applying the UV light that like the plants started to shrink and get smaller.
Look at this
And by the
fucking
time you start
plants.
applying UV light like this, the plants should pretty much be done growing.
They're in 2 pots, and look at the roots hanging out of the bottom. Are these things like aquaponic? What the fuck were these growing in?
None of them look great. That's why I said I
Spring.
want to walk around their facility or get a tour of where they're growing it at,
Those
because I'm
roots
just
look
curious.
A lot of cannabis research is kind of like this, and I think there's even like a research report. I think they came out, or maybe it was just an article criticizing this, but like that was actually the point being made, was that like it was like cannabis research about cannabis research not being very good for some of these reasons, and that especially in government research, like they're not testing the things that people are actually working with, because those resources are heavily scrutinized and heavily controlled, and also are not even the things that people are growing in the first place.
I
So
was gonna
possibly not
say,
even relevant.
did you ever smoke low tide or breaking wave?
I
Not
haven't,
I.
but it's what that they had available to them. I'm not worried
I've
necessarily
never
as much
heard of that.
about the strain as I am about the cultivation method. Like I said, I would like to go see,
Yeah.
because I do know there is good research being done on hemp, as they're referring to it. It is cannabis ultimately at the end of the day. But Bruce Bugby, I think, I can't remember what state he's in, but he's done a tour of their lab. Their controlled environment grow chambers, in my opinion, are well constructed. The plants look healthy. He showed the difference between one plant in a pot versus another, and showed like root binding and root constricting, and how much larger or smaller you could get a plant in the same size container. Like I think that he has a very found, like good understanding of growing cannabis. So there are researchers out there. I'm not 100% sure that Guelph or Gelt, however it's pronounced, has that same level, but they're putting out interesting studies that make me have my thoughts provoked, because for a long time, a lot of people were beating that drum on UV and how it's awesome. And I've seen studies about how in nature it can be good. That was the other thing I wanted to say. I said, I'm fucking talking shit with you. People are like, well, there's UV from the sun all day. So if I'm only given it for 3.5 hours in my grow room, how dangerous or how bad can it actually be? And it is actually dangerous and harmful potentially to you, depending on which UV it is. So be careful with that stuff, and your
It's
skin
like,
and
as far
eyes
as
and
I
things like
know,
that.
UV on roots, no good. And we saw roots hanging out. I don't know where they
and
were
they're
hanging
brown
out
as
in the
shit.
grow. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not arguing
Yeah, I
that
have
those plants
questions,
look
and I
very
would just
healthy.
say my impression of the science has been that UV light does have a benefit during flowering. So I just want to sort of put that out there.
There's a real, there's
This
an
would
old
be
study.
evidence to the contrary, but it's sort of like an outlier at this point, as far as I'm concerned.
That's why I
Well,
brought it
this
up. It
is just
feels like the
pushing it.
opposite of
This
the.
is just a kind of, to me, it's kind of like, okay, this much is too much, guys. Okay, we'll take your advice. 3.5 hours is too much. Let's maybe go down
At
a
that
little bit.
concentration, or even with that particular
Oh, yeah.
UV, because
But
like
yeah.
UVA is different than UVB. So I'm wondering how much of which one, because I know like the micro study I've mentioned in the past, where they used like plasma lights and even some UV lights with rosemary and hemp and things like that over there. They're finding higher terpenes and cannabinoid levels. So it really does come down to who's using it, how they're using it, and how the study is conducted. So
Yeah.
So that
it's
study
just
is,
one point of research in a broad scheme of things that are still being to be determined, I guess.
it's like that study is like proving that when you drop a nuke, it kills things. It's like, yeah, we kind of knew that really high UV exposure is going to be bad, but this, I don't know if this is testing anything really after
Yeah, I have a study from 2009 that claims it increases in fluorescence and the leaves added UVB. I'll put it in the chat.
Share it,
So
dude. Everybody's got
yeah.
the ability to share. You can do the share screen, show it off. Let's let the people see the stuff.
I could do that too. Let me put it in the YouTube chat quick, and then I'll show you.
Hold on. Somebody just actually texted me on the side and said the PAR levels were really low. So what was the ppfd of the PAR light that was applied at the same time as that UV light? That makes a huge difference. They're not like cutting off the PAR light to give them 3 hours of just UV or something, are they? Anyway,
I hope not.
I have questions.
That'd be crazy.
I have questions. That was from one of our buddies, Berkshire Bud, who apparently has read the study in question and is texting me on the side some things about
I'm
it.
pretty sure it said that the lights were on for 18-hour photo period and a 6-hour dark time, but I could be misremembering what I saw.
So, yeah, but what was
I
the
haven't read it
photon
start to
density?
finish.
He's saying that it was only 250 and that they're also giving 250 micromoles of density of UV light. So it'd be like a 50-50 blend between UV and PAR spectrum light. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
bad.
that would make some sense. And if it was only 250 micromoles of PAR density in the first place, I'm sort of surprised the plants got as big as they did. This is now like fourth hand discussion, but it's interesting. And it is fun that all of this stuff is coming out. I'm actually working on some of the other research that Bugsby, Jen, a few other researchers have been looking at on spectrum, on light, on the role of different wavelengths. And it's interesting stuff. It's a lot of fun.
You're right about that. They had 100 UMule when their cuttings, and then they increased it to I just lost it, 225 UMule per meter squared per second at the canopy.
Well, that's sort of ridiculous.
And the propagation in the vegetative growth stages had 18 hours. Let's see, photo period. I'm trying to see if they wrote for flower, if they increased.
All right. Well, since I'm already screen sharing, this is accumulation of delta-9 in leaves and floral tissue of cannabis sativa. Vertical bars indicate plus or minus 1 standard error. UVB refers to ultraviolet radiation convoluted with a special action spectrum weighing function for plant active radiation, i.e. before integration over wavelengths. The spectral components have been multiplied by this function. This procedure stresses the importance of the short wavelength components. But in any case, they do it as exposure K3 meters squared. I don't know exactly what that means, but
3 meters squared. That would be something to the cubic meters.
And what's that in freedom units, though?
Square meters.
Kelvin or something?
units. But
What's
the long and
KJ?
short of it is
Kilojoules? The hell's
Kilojoules?
KJ?
Kilojoules. Okay.
THC milligrams per gram went from 4.5-ish to 6.5 on the leaf and 25 to about 33 in the thing. And basically, I think, what did it say? I think it said 5 to 10% increase. Anyway, I put the link in chat, and this is entitled The Effect of Ultraviolet Radiation on the Accumulation of Medical Compounds in Plants. And they do one other plant, which I'm unaware of. But
yeah, this is more fitting into what I understood from like the body of research on UV light. So thanks for sharing that as an important counterpoint, because I think we otherwise would have left everybody with the impression that it was done now. But it is always interesting to consider contrary evidence and to then to try to account for it.
Well, I think it also just goes to the point of you can't just implement it willy-nilly. You can't just go, here's a UV light that somebody has in their grow space, so I'm just going to slap it up in my grow space. If you have a different size grow and different requirement for your UV, you could either fry your plants to shit, or you could increase your THC. And
well,
there are good arguments to be made for both sides.
In this one, I think
you can fuck it up, but if you do it right, you can benefit.
100% agree with that.
I think it probably shows that 50% is too high of a mix for ultra wavelength radiation in terms of your overall lighting blend. The maximum proportion for the longer wavelength is only about 30% in order for it to continue to contribute to PAR. I would imagine beneficial uses of ultraviolet would be down in like the 20% or less of the total blend of sort of light. That's why I originally said like maybe 150 micromoles of density if you had 1,000 micromoles of PAR density. But I'm sort of no longer surprised that they had trouble growing plants if they're doing 250 micromoles of UV and 250 micromoles of PAR.
I don't think that was the case. Looking at, I need to read it further, but it says here in the results that it was a 500-to-1 ratio of PPFD to UV, but that would mean that there's very, very little UV, and it seems like they cranked the UV. But that's just what this is saying. In the results section, it says equals 500-to-1 at which was within the range normally reported PAR to UVB in the solar spectrum.
Is that just part of UVB? Because I mean, based on the photon densities they're reporting, it seemed like, well, I'd have to get into it when we should just not like sort of.
I think in flower they might have went up to 500 ppfd. I'm trying to find the exact point where they discussed that. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to just bring up because at least they have the data, and like even Tao, I'm glad that you shared that study as well, because like I've said, I do believe that there is a case to be made that it can benefit the plant. But it's like for our audience in particular, I think this is even more so sort of what we've kind of warned about in the past, that maybe it's a better idea to try and implement a dehumidifier or air conditioner or better grow light before you start throwing UV in there, because I'm sure there's somewhere else that you can spend money before you start going and investing in a light that has UVB built into it, or getting a UV bar and installing that, and then going through all the proper precautions. Like I know California Lightworks, I think was their name. I don't see too many of their lights anymore, but they had a like flashing, really annoying light that would be on whenever anything UV was on, just to remind you like, hey, if you're in the room, be very careful. Like this is a damaging light. Make sure you're wearing your protection and don't be in here very long, because it's potentially very dangerous to you. So these are things that should definitely not be forgotten. And I see Noah over there unmuted himself for a second. So are we at the point in the show where we're going to be able to get the walkthrough here in a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. But I just wanted, I was just going to say, all that stuff that you just said is all super huge. Definitely make sure you have your air conditioner, your environment right. But another huge thing that people don't understand when it comes to growing really good weed is you need good genetics. So I'd probably be like, just keep pheno hunting, keep looking for new, because you can always find something that's really killer out there, so that's another thing you can also spend your money on, and a rabbit hole. It's good, good one to go down, and a good investment as well.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get a lot higher THC from a great strain than you are from a little bit of UV light. Those things were showing like the difference from that 26 to 32. But if you're growing a 15%er, it's not ever going to be higher than 15%. Not that THC is the only thing that matters, but it's just one of the many things that are in a big basket full of the things we enjoy in cannabis. So I totally agree with you there, Noah. The genetics are important.
Too.
What are you going to show us off?
In your space as well.
That's huge. Making sure it works in your area.
Because that's helps. That's another reason to go through a whole bunch. All right, check them out.
I'm going to spotlight you, Noah. All right, spotlight for everyone. And Noah, you're muted, so if you want to unmute, maybe let us know what we're looking at.
Yeah, totally. So this right here, this is Sherbet Sunset Sherbet crossed with Dosey Dos. This is kind of like a finicky plant, and it's taken me all of this time to kind of figure out how because I'm completely organic in here, and it took me a couple runs to figure it out, but I'm getting there. My yields aren't as quite where I want, and I didn't train as much. I just really focused on the water and hitting the numbers right and doing everything. And so some of these buds aren't as big as they normally would be. Like this overflow plant here, this is a big yielder, but that's like a 10-week, 11-week strain. I don't care what they say. I've grown that for years, and you need to push that plant at least 10 years. And then and this is I just am doing right here. I got a couple over here on the side, just on my 15. And I'm just still trying to figure out this one. This is Tropicana Punch, Tropicana Cookies Cross. That's my first time, the second time running that. Apple Fritter. These ones were only about 4.5, 5 weeks in. And these ones are only like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks in. So I kind of have my room layered like that. But man, some of this stuff is really smelling good. The organic part is a lot of fun, and the end game is, what I'm trying to learn from some of these OGs here on the panel. They're all growing organic, so I figure I better learn something new myself.
No, I got a question. You said your yields are lower than you'd like, but are your inputs less money? So are you spending less money on the input?
I don't think no, because I'm using high end stuff, and I'm not, I'm experimenting, so I'm throwing stuff at the wall. I'm trying to
throw a soil test at the wall.
Yeah, especially because I'm doing all new soil. I'm running all new living soil, and then I just kind of I kind of like thought maybe it would just go the whole time without amending it. It's my first time ever doing it, so I kind of ran into some snags here in my last couple of runs. But
well, I'd say that's pretty cheap for inputs if you did nothing.
No, yeah. No, I'm not doing that now though.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, it was cheap, and the yields were a lot less, and I just ran into a lot of yellowing, but the yields are a lot better than when I didn't do any inputs. I'll say that, and certain strains have performed way better. Like this Sherbado plant right here. This is kind of a lower yielder. It's like a do-si-do cross, and everybody's growing do-si-dos knows that's kind of a lower yielder. But it's starting to get pretty chunky. It's still got, this is probably like start of day 1 of week 7. So these are some pretty good sized nugs for that strain.
Looking good in there, man. I say keep up with the organics. Just try and dial in your inputs so that you can spend less, because that's the whole advantage of organics, right? Is being more aware of what's going on in your soil and being able to spend a little bit less money on inputs.
Well, and the input cost goes down after the first run or two because he had to switch over to soil. So he's getting a lot of the base soils now. And then hopefully you'll be able to re-amend and top dress and not have to toss that stuff out or, get rid of it. You're just gonna keep reusing it. I'm not sure if that was the case when you were using your other mediums before or not.
No, it wasn't. And that is kind of the thing. I'm trying to learn to be sustainable. I'm trying to be environmentally friendly, but it's also just because I want to smoke better stuff and just be healthier and just and really all you guys talking about organic and stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not like some gangster grower, but I can do this, so I'm gonna do it, and I want to learn new stuff, and I think I'm gonna try cocoa here in a couple runs. I've never done it either, really, and I'm gonna try doing that. I'm just gonna try learning new stuff, but I'm never gonna not grow I'm not going to not grow organic anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of ordering a pallet of soil, spendy living soil. So,
attaboy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm jumping in head first. That's the only way I know how to do it, man.
We'll have to teach you how to re-amend. Spartan Grown's got a good re-amendment mix. It's
absolutely
pretty simple, good stuff. And I definitely think you'll crush it if you use cocoa, because as somebody who's tried a lot of different methods, myself, and I've seen you have success with lots of different methods now. I think that cocoa, people tend to take to it pretty quickly and have a lot of success with it, especially when you've got people like Dr. MJ who could basically give you a guide where you could have numbers within a range. And if you've got a meter, you have a pretty much fairly bulletproof method. And I think you're going to enjoy cocoa because the rapid growth and fairly large yields, I think, will be comparable to whatever your previous method was, in my opinion.
Well, I'm lucky to have access to all you guys, and I'm a part of the show. But I can ask questions, and everybody that's listening and at any time listening to this, know where to find all you guys and find me and find everybody. And man, it's awesome to be a part. And I do thank Shane for bringing me and introducing the show and everybody here. And I have a blast doing it, man. I was excited. I was like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, it's looking good, man. Your plan's looking really good,
man.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, but so guys know how it goes, man. To do something like this Almy, it's a lot of work, man. And I got a grandkid now, so I've been just juggling both. And it's I do want to learn how to do more living soil because eventually I want to try and maybe like do an automatic water. I've never done that. I've hand water everything, so
Looks great.
yeah, I appreciate
Awesome
it, man.
chunks, man.
Yeah,
We'll have to
Yeah.
teach you a watering system when you get into cocoa and have Dr.
Yeah.
MJ get you on that high frequency fertigation with the DIY watering system. It's easier than you think, and it's definitely super effective.
So
Yeah, I'm real
Smart
proud of it.
Poker.
And I
Sorry,
won't
go
listen-
ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to interrupt blatantly, but Smart Poker was asking what the difference is we think of between no-till soil, super soil, and living soil. And yeah, I could go into that if.
That's a great question. Let's hear
I
it.
could jump on that.
Well, I think that like super soil is there's no living bugs in it for one thing. Like that's you mix up your super soil with the organic amendments, and then you use that soil. I would say living soil could be no-till. No-till and living soil, I would imagine, are the same, where you have like you have your earthworms in the no-till bed, and that makes it a living soil. All your stuff is there. Like I have a super soil. I consider myself more like a super soil because I keep my worm bin separate, and I take all the amendments and mix it into a soil and use that soil, and I top dress with other stuff. But a
Well,
no-till
I
and a
bet you
living
there's
soil.
life in
Living
that shit.
soil, living soil does
Right.
not
So you
require
go with
worms.
your ATG, right? Give
So-
your
so-
definitions.
You were dead on until you said living soil has worms in it. It
Okay.
can, but it's not a
Right, it
requirement.
can, right. Okay.
Yeah, and so can no-till, right? No-till can have worms crawling all up in it, and
Yep.
I can go drop worms in my low-till, no-till bed, but it's living soil, and even super soil, man. Once you incorporate any fertilizer, especially organic fertilizer, that's living. You've added life.
Guess you're
so-
kind of right, but the goal isn't to. Well, I guess it is kind of to keep that life alive in there. But yeah, that's the way I always looked at it. Like the way
You're
I
right.
explained it. But you're right too. You're more right.
The
Well-
tilling process, that the whole no-till literally just means if you till it or not. So I mean that's the easiest delineation to make of all of them, right? But the living soil versus a super soil, I think you might start off with a super soil and it becomes a living soil because you might have some local pests or whatever predators get attracted and get up in there, and now you've got
True.
stuff that
IMO.
yeah, I think it only is a super soil for so long, and then you start to get things naturally in there, whether
So you
it's
sweat
from
on it.
introducing the input or your natural surroundings. Even indoor, sometimes there's little cracks and things that can allow things to get in.
Building off of that, Jack, I really think that no-till is a bit of a misnomer for any kind of container style agriculture. Like nobody tills the media in your container. That's like dragging a plow through it and turning the soil over. So yeah, I think you're in field agriculture. No-till means that you're sort of practicing the soil microbiology. Turning the soil over really kills a lot of the soil microbiology that's in there. It exposes things that should be 6 inches under, and it buries the stuff that should be on the top. And it's done for aeration. And then you just supplement things with chemical fertilizers. So the whole idea of no-till is to stop doing that aeration, to do sort of a more ecological style of growing in your field, so you don't have to turn the soil over every year. But like, it's not, I mean, no, you're taking those same methods about how to grow in an ecological way with the microorganisms and all the rest of that that's necessary to do that in field style agriculture. You're recreating that part in a container. And I understand sort of the connection there, but it is sort of always a misnomer.
It's comparative to like I used to grow in 3-gallon pots and 5-gallon pots or whatever. I could dump it out each round onto a tarp, bust it up, and then re-amend it with my amendments and then stir it up so it's nice and even. Or I could chop the stalk out, leave just a tiny, tiny little portion to plant whatever solo cup into that. And from there, even before that happens, some people would put a cover crop down and keep the biology alive and do some of those extra steps. And before they can cut down the cover crop to add some nutrition into the soil and add like their top dressing and then plant in. That's where I feel like some people feel that connection, even though they're in a pot or in a container inside their home, to the no-till mentality, I guess. It's become like a culture within the organic community. I think people want to get attached to titles and labels or whatever. It feels like a merit badge almost at times, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, I mean,
Tilling
this is sort of the full circle moment. Earlier, I was talking about Roundup Ready crops. One of the marketing strategies behind the Roundup Ready crops was that they could be done in a no-till style, which was literally an environmental argument about why this was a better crop to plant because it would prevent farmers from having to till. But of course, it required farmers to have to spray Roundup. So those differences sometimes make sort of profound
trade-offs to say the least, because I've seen
Yeah.
organic farms that till and they change crops. So it's like there's a grass crop over there, they till it, now they're growing corn or something like that wasn't able to because the ground was maybe too muddy or too hard or something like that. You said it adds aeration, it's adding the greenery in there that compost and adds some nutrition and things like that.
There you go.
I encourage
That's exactly
people
it.
to call it organic growing. That's what I encourage people to call it.
Yeah, but a tilling is not, here's the way I look at it. Tilling is not a form of farming. It is a method to incorporate air into your soil, period.
Yes.
Or other things.
And you incorporate
things into the
or you
soil.
don't. And
Or
if you
to break
don't, then
up
you're
the
no
soil.
till.
It's too hard.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm no-till until my soil doesn't have air, and then I need to till it. So
I think, but then they broad fork it, but they say that's not tilling. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of farmers
Right.
till as a form of weed control, though. I mean, just to turn over the weeds after the field has been fallow, things like that. There's lots of different.
That's a great point. I want to give Spartan a chance to jump out here because I know he's got to get his self ready for the Michigan Bros Grow Show over at 6 o'clock here on the West Coast. I think that's 9 o'clock there on the East Coast. So I want to give him his final thoughts and shout out opportunity.
Appreciate that, Jack. You guys can catch me here in about 15 minutes on the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Appreciate if you watch me there. Sorry, my dog's making weird noises, distracting me. He must know it's ready to go out. Time to go outside. But anyhow, love you guys. Love the talk today. It was it was weird. It was just like a nice free flowing conversation. My favorite kinds. And I learned some shit too. So that's always good. And can't forget about chat. Love you guys. We'll see you here next week. I don't know. I've got nothing. My head's empty right now. I can't think.
Fuck the MCMA.
Fuck the MCMA. There you go.
Healthy
email
reminder.
address, bud.
Keep
Peace
growing,
out,
everybody.
Spartan.
He didn't give his
Hello,
email
Spartan.
address, but everybody knows it.
You can email Spartan at spartangrown@gmail.com. And you can also find him Spartan Grown on social media. And Mitten Canico is where he works professionally. They do some pretty badass stuff over there. I think it's worth checking out. They're featured on Canna Cribs, Deeply Rooted on YouTube, which is pretty badass. So cheers, Spartan. I always appreciate him being on here. I do agree that today was a nice free-flowing conversation. We didn't get to include as much of the chat because we had a full panel tonight. We had the full 9 of us, at least at the beginning. And now it's just down to the remainder of us who are here. But I think that we had a good little talk about the UV and things like that earlier. But I'm very happy everybody, for the most part, got to participate tonight. So I want to ask maybe Brandon, because he's been quiet over there for a little while, if he has any final thoughts or maybe ideas about what we discussed tonight that he'd like to share before we close up.
No, not really. I just was listening to you guys kind of go back and forth. Thought I'll be, doing my own thing because I did purchase a 40-foot long like mobile lab. It's already been converted and it's going to arrive tomorrow. And then I just got to figure out a place. I'm trying to find a piece of property right now, get my own kind of thing going because having partners isn't the best thing.
Brandon, I saw the clip of you showing off the lab with your girlfriend, right? She
Yes.
didn't look so excited, was she? Or is that just like I misread her face?
No, she's she doesn't mind. I think that she knows that I'll be able to utilize it to
yeah,
do
I'm
some
just
cool
joking,
stuff in
but
it. But we're all
I
just
thought that was
cool.
I thought that was the NASA Agritech lab, or maybe
No.
not.
no, he's got like a shipping container lab, but it looks really good in there. It's got everything you need.
Oh yeah, the Connex, right? Isn't
Yes.
the Connex thing? Yes.
yeah,
That was
so-
impressive. Look at all that stuff we can fit into one Connex, honestly.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's got different and it's got both sides of it have heating air, and it's like you can section it off. So it's pretty neat. I think I can do some legitimate like testing in there, and I want to do some testing to do like a perfect formulation for this carbon-based fertilizer.
I think it's funny that Brandon now has a lab in a shipping container and a grow in a shipping container. And so basically the only way you can grow, tornado proof in Oklahoma, his shit, you can literally put on a rail car or whatever, and just ship it out if tragic weather was coming your way. So it's pretty cool that you could essentially at some point, shut down your operation for a little bit and just ship it wherever you want in the country. And you've got your lab and you've got your grow. So shit, you've opened up a whole world of opportunity for yourself now, I guess.
I like the sort of fantastical idea of like a mobile lab just in general, just like being able to be like, all right, let's hitch it up to the truck and move across the state and do whatever. There are various people who do things like that.
You need
I
a hell of a
imagine that
flatbed
the
for
shipping
that
container does
shipping
not
container.
feel particularly mobile to
That's what I was just gonna say.
No.
You need I have two
It's
of them,
like-
and they were delivered on flatbed semi trucks. So
Yeah.
yeah. No, I'll just call my semi truck driver over to get these things off my property. Yeah,
But that's the greatest thing.
It's
See,
possible,
because it's
though.
only
It is
$140
possible.
in Oklahoma City.
Hmm.
So if I need to take it somewhere else, it's only going to cost me maybe maximum $250.
Wow.
what?
Yeah, dude, it's freaking awesome.
That's unbelievable.
Get that helicopter
$3,000
tech.
to have one delivered in California. $3,000 to have it delivered.
Whoa.
It's
Dude,
because
I
gas is
saw- I
what, $7
found
a
this
gallon
thing.
here?
It's
I
about
found
that
this
much
thing
now.
on Facebook Marketplace, and I like panic bought it because I thought that like it was gonna go so quick, and it probably would have
Goodbye.
though. I
a good
probably
buy.
probably would have though. But I was like, dude, I need to have that in my life. Like that's a good investment. I can do something with that.
Yep, good call.
It's good to trust your gut. Sometimes that stuff doesn't stick around. So I'm glad that you got it. And I'm curious to see what you are able to find out with it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
What kind of equipment is within the lab? Do you have like a HPLC or other things like that?
No. So the lab is just it's a converted 40-foot shipping container, but it has a full sink, vent hood, storage cabinets. It has a shower and eye wash station, and it has 2 compartments that are both independently heating and air. It also has air compressor, so you can have any type of air kind of tool hooked up and utilized throughout the whole thing. Plus, it also has water, has 200 amps. That's pretty dope. There's a little video on my IG.
Now that you kind of talked through it, I do actually remember seeing some of that stuff. I wasn't sure if you were planning to like bring certain equipment in there. I know with like the vented hood, the first thing that my mind would go to, other than growing mushrooms or something, would be doing tissue culture. And is that something that you'd be interested in doing or hiring somebody to do within your lab?
Yeah, what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna do some agronomic stuff with cannabis. That would be ideal. Once I get a bunch of data and stuff that I'm trying to collect to do a couple of formulations, then I will probably, I'd like to have some mycology incubators, a PCR, and then maybe start doing some medicinal mushroom varieties because the place is hooked up and um, I could hook up the lab equipment for extracts, cultivation, everything like that, just in that small space.
That's really cool stuff. And I want to give you the chance to give your shout outs where the people can find you. Because with enough of us here, we'll probably take the rest of our time just to let people know where we are. So go ahead, Brendan.
Sure. My name is Brendan Rust. I appreciate all the listeners that come and say hi to me when I'm at the conventions and that show me love and support. I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing. A lot of stuff going on. So you guys can find me at rust.brandon, www.bokashiearthworks.com for different products and microbes. And I will see everybody next week.
looking forward to seeing you next week. The PCR, one thing I forgot to mention was I think that'll be kind of cool because I know you can definitely do cannabis sex testing on there if you figure out whatever the protocol is for that. And I think you also might be able to test like for things like hop latent viroid. And if not, I know there are a whole bunch of different things you could like identify certain microbiology with PCR. So there's tons of different availability with that technology. So like I said earlier, super exciting stuff. And thank you so much for joining us, Brandon.
I'll see you guys.
Next up, we've got Aaron the Grower.
Thanks, Jack. Panel, it's really good to be here. I'd like to apologize to chat. I'm never really paying attention, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to interact. I'm like a two birds, one stone kind of guy. So I'm always doing something else while I'm on here. So if anybody has any questions and they're trying to reach out to me on chat and I'm not paying attention, just shoot me a DM or jump on my website, atgacres.com, and send me that link on there goes straight to my email, my personal email. So I can get that. I can respond to you guys, or just shoot me a DM on Instagram. I try and be good about that. I'm Aaron the Grower, ATG Acres on Instagram, atgacres.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm just sending from Jack Greenstock the link in case for Tao. I don't know. I think you're a moderator, so it should have shared it earlier. But that's the UV study that Tao shared earlier. And with that said, I guess I'll pass it next to the American one.
All right, I'm here, Jack and panel. It was great chatting it up tonight. It's always good. And I made it in chat a couple times. I love everyone over there too. I'm the American one on the YouTube and the American one _with_18s on the IG. Most of you know where to find me. If you just start searching the American one, the little guy with the top hat, American top hat, that's me. So yeah. And I forgot what else I was going to say, but yeah, peace out, everybody.
It's all good, man. You're normally very good about giving everybody a little shout out. And, I think this is a good week. Happy to have you back and look forward to seeing you next week. And with that said, I'll pass it over to Noah the Grower.
Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, I got some cool new stuff going on in my room, and I'm going to be experimenting, going on a journey. And yeah, if you want to check out what I got going on, I'm Noah the Grower with 2 E's. You can recognize me. I got to do it's me with a big bud in front of my face. I've been using that. That's a bud I grew. Probably 8-9 years ago now. Well, it was actually a Hawaiian haze big mug I had. But yeah, you can find me there. And most weeks here on Grow with My Fellow Growers with the panel as always. So see everybody next week.
We're always happy to have you when you can make it. And even when you don't, we totally understand. So thank you again for coming. And it's exciting next upcoming few weeks because when this time changes happen, we'll get to see a lot of Noah's garden. So we'll get to see some of those plants progress over the following weeks, which is exciting. So thanks again for coming, Noah. And next up, we've got Dr. MJ.
Hey, thank you, Jack. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to the chatters. I think we all were sort of like asleep with a switch on chat today, but we love you, chatters. And yeah, let's see. You brought up the New Year's Grow Challenge. Thanks for giving us a shout out for that. That is coming up, of course, on New Year's Day. We are organizing a big new gear giveaway for the first week of the challenge, give away a bunch of lights and other stuff, do cool stuff all throughout the grow. We're still organizing our side challenge and other things. We're going to do it, based on our groups are going to be based on the media that you're growing in. It's going to be the first time that we've done that. We want to sort of make sure everybody knows that everybody is welcome. So we got different medias organized that way, and we're going to do fun kind of stuff. Our challenges aren't really competitions. They're ways to learn and ways to just grow together. So come over to cookovercannabis/challenge, sign up for that. I got a cool video out this week too. I'm planning to do the premiere on Tuesday. This is a review of the PhotonTech SQ 300 Watt Pro. But it's cool because I'm diving into the science of far red light. Bugbee and the other researchers I mentioned earlier done some really interesting new research with lasers and new LED technology that allows them to more specifically look at specific wavelengths and their impact on photosynthesis. And so we'll look into that sort of new science that's potentially redefining PAR. That's on Tuesday, and I'll be giving away the PhotonTech light during that premiere of that video. So hope you guys can join me there. that was a lot. So I'll get the hell out of here. Grow love, everyone. Have a wonderful week and enjoy your gardens.
Thank you so much, Doc. And definitely, I think the challenges are more of like a grow along, and it's a lot of great community building and giveaways and awesome things like that. I think somebody in the chat mentioned, it might have been Cheddar Bob earlier, but somebody said you should reach out to Bruce Bugby. So maybe I will. I'm gonna maybe figure out if I could email or DM him and try and get him to come on the show and talk about some of the stuff that Doc will be talking about on Tuesday. So look forward to that video coming out, and there's a giveaway. So it might be worth showing up to check it out for the premiere. And last and certainly not least, Matthew Gates.
Yeah, this flew by for me, very surprisingly. But I guess that's because I've been talking all day. I almost actually had another live stream event today with my friend David Stokes. We were going to talk about tea and such things, because we're just friends, and he's very big into tea. But if you're interested in plant health information, you can find me on a bunch of different places, but most primarily zenthanol.com. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, as well as my Instagram at SyncAngel. And I really look forward to more of these. I'm continually surprised that we've been going on for so long. And I love that we continue to meet week to week. So shout out to the chat, shout out to the panel, and look forward to our mutual success.
Always a great way to send it off. And I totally agree. It's great to be here for as long as we have been. It's great to have the chat and the panel members that continue to show up week after week. Even though we didn't talk to the chat and engage it with them as much this week, I think we were all very engaged with the topic, which is a great feeling. I think time flies when you're having fun, is the old adage I've always heard. And I definitely felt like that tonight, and genuinely feel that way many, many times when I come together with all of you. This is a great learning experience for me and a wonderful opportunity. If you want to find more from me, I'm at Jack Greenstock, like you can see behind me on my little logo, on Instagram, Jack_Greenstock on Twitter, JackGreenstock47@gmail.com if you want to email me. And then if you want a copy of my book, 50 Strains of Green, go to 50strains.com. But mainly just want to say thanks to everybody. Like the chat, Spartan said it earlier. I don't know if it was Spartan or somebody else. It was Aaron, actually. He said, if you wrote a message during the show that you really pertinently feel like you want to have answered from me directly, and I didn't get back to you because I didn't see it, I was engaged with the wonderful conversation, please feel free to send me a DM or an email. That's why we give out that contact information. I've connected with so many people that listen to the show in the community. If and when I have free time, it might not be in 1 minute or 10 minutes or whatever, maybe within an hour, but if I have a moment to get back to you, I will do my best to try and do so. And I know many other people on the panel feel that way as well. So feel free to reach out. That's one of the things that we really enjoy, is connecting with you all in the community. And all the new people here, thank you for joining, because we do get new people every week. So thank you for joining us, and hope everybody has a great week. This is Jack Greenstock signing out. Peace out, y'all.
Grow love, everyone.
Keep growing.